Got some proof that evolution is wrong. I'm going to look at the story of a beetle and how apparently there's evolution involved in a particular process of a beetle losing its wings. They tell a story, and I'm gonna speak about that in a second. But let's just take a quick look at this is a Talk Origins archive, and Talk Origins. The subtitle is Exploring the Creation Evolution Controversy. But really, I think this site is mostly for atheists, evolutionists, who don't believe anything about creation. So I'm just going to read their definition of evolution. One of the most respected evolutionary biologists has defined biological evolution as, in the broadest sense, evolution is merely change, and so is all pervasive. Galaxy languages and political systems all evolve. Biological evolution is change in the properties of populations of organisms that transcend the lifetime of a single individual. The ontogeny of an individual is not considered evolution. Individual organisms do not evolve. The changes in populations that are considered evolutionary are those that are inheritable via genetic material, and that's going to be key. The genetic material is the instruction code, the logic, the code, the script, however you want to call it, that tells the body how to make different cells and that sort of thing. It's the instruction set via the genetic material from one generation to the next. Biological evolution may be slight or substantial. It embraces everything from slight changes in the proportion of different alleles within a population, such as those determining blood types, to the successive alterations that led from the earliest proto-organism to snails, bees, giraffes, and dandelions. Now, might I point out that if evolution is true and we came from a chemical goop and got more complicated, that's what evolution says, and they say it here, the earliest proto-organism to snails, bees, giraffes, information is increasing there to the more complex organisms. You don't go from a single-celled organism to a giraffe without information being added. Now, if you want to argue that all the information is in the gene code for all living things, and that was there from the start, well, then you have other issues, but that's not evolution. So I want to look at the example of a beetle. Now, this is creation.com, and evolution has an example of a beetle. A beetle that's on an island that apparently has evolved and has lost its wings due to evolution. So I'll just read you a quick example and we'll talk about it. For example, beetles losing their wings. A particular winged beetle type lives on large continental areas. The same beetle type on a small windy island has no wings. What happened is easy to imagine. Every now and then, in beetle populations, there might be a mutational defect which prevents wings from forming. That is, the wing-making information is lost or scrambled in some way. The damaged gene, a gene that is a long sentence carrying one part of the total instructions recorded on the DNA, will then be passed to all the beetle's offspring and to others as it is copied over and over. As that beetle procreates, obviously, all the descendant beetles will be wingless. Now, the evolutionary idea is that on a windy island, you have these beetles with wings, and maybe a mutation that causes one beetle not to have wings. And so when they fly up in the air, the wind scoots them off into the ocean, and they die. So every beetle with wings tends to be picked up by the wind and die when it tries to fly. What you're left with is some of the very few beetles who, by way of mutation or something, lost its wings. So what you have is a larger percentage of wingless beetles that are procreating, reproducing, and their offspring tends to have no wings. Now, they would call that evolution, but I'm here to tell you that is actually not evolution by the definition we just described. That is natural selection. Natural selection is the process by which and it's not even an intelligent process. It's just a random process by which nature weeds out species that have appendages or something that would cause them harm, as an example, like the beetle. Natural selection would be nature selecting for the beetle without wings, because the beetle with wings gets blown away and dies in the ocean. That is not what evolution is. Evolution is molecules to man. It is the successive alterations that led from the earliest proto-organism to snails, bees, and giraffes. That is an increase in information in the DNA, in the genetic code, in the structure, in the cells, and the ability to turn into some of these really complex things, like a giraffe, which is amazingly complex. It takes a lot of information to do that. Now, again, like I said, if you think all that information was there from the start, we should have a whole nother conversation. And then you believe in a God, apparently, because there's a whole bunch of information from the start. But evolution believes there is no information there from the start, and over millions of years, information is built upon that. But in the case of this flightless beetle, which could be used as a good example of evolution, that's natural selection, and that makes sense. But the key part is with that one is that the beetle isn't gaining information. The beetle lost its wings. It actually lost genetic information. It lost the ability to grow wings and to know how to fly because it lost its wings. That's it. That's entropy. That's the loss of information. That's exactly what creation says should be occurring. Evolution says what we should see is a little bit of information growing over millions of years to a lot of information. And the evidence, the scientific, repeatable, observable evidence, such as the example of the beetle, or any other example in nature that you can look at, it only shows us change within a species, within a kind, or decrease in information like this, where you get the wingless beetle, but that is not evolution at all. That's simply natural selection. And creation speaks of a world that is winding down. The entropy is continuing from order to chaos. That's actually what we observe in the animal kingdom and in the world that we see in space. Order to chaos. So the proof that evolution is incorrect is the fact that they have absolutely zero proof of evolution occurring where information is increasing. They speculate. They say over millions of years this must be occurring, but they have absolutely zero evidence to prove it's true, and there should be boatloads of evidence to prove that it's true that information is increasing, and it's simply not. If you can give me one example of a place where information is increasing, that would be great. One example that often comes up is the example of diseases or what's the word I'm looking for? Antibiotic resistant bacteria. Now, in one example that I've heard about, where a bacteria, I forget what it's called, something in the stomach, apparently developed resistance to the antibiotic. The antibiotic was created in such a way as to interact with an enzyme that was already in that bacteria. And what happened was some of the bacteria degenerated. It lost genetic information, and it didn't have that enzyme. So when the antibiotic came, it didn't have anything to mix with. It had to mix with that enzyme to create poison. That's how they designed it to work. Again, there's designers that design these things. Intelligence is behind all this. There was no enzyme to mix with the antibiotic to create the poison to kill the bacteria. So the bacteria lived. Now that might be seen as an advantageous, evolving of the bacteria, but that is not at all. The overall trend is downward because that bacteria is losing information. So they may have gotten, they may not have gotten killed this time, but the next time they will because they've lost information. Again, what we see is a decrease in information. We don't see an increase in information. And biblical creation describes what we see in the world exactly, perfectly, and it fits. Evolution, as every atheist and evolutionist define it, is an increase in information, and we do not see an increase in information. please, if you have an example, tell me of the example where there was an increase in information that was useful beyond a few generations or whatever. What you'll find, I think, in every case is that the genetic information, the code that is in that organism or whatever, is actually decreasing. You're not actually seeing an increase in information. Now, just the fact that there is information in cells, you'd have to put one and one together and admit that there was intelligence behind that, because there's no computer code that is created by random. There's no random process that we've ever observed or repeated that creates information that is usable. There's absolutely nothing we found that way, and that's what evolution believes. It believes randomness to order, and obviously the Bible is exactly opposite. It goes from order to randomness, chaos, and the law of thermodynamics says entropy occurs within any system effectively, and you could say that the Earth is not what's the terminology? It is not a set apart system. There's inputs from the sun and all that, but that's fine. Let's go up to the universe level. As far as you think, that is a closed system. So in that closed system, as big as if you think there's something outside of the universe, fine, go up to that level. That whole thing is a closed system. In which case, you'd have to agree that what we observe is entropy happening, order to chaos. The Earth is decreasing in speed. The Moon is getting farther away from the Earth. The Sun is burning up its material. We see entropy happening all around us. What we observe, what we can repeat in labs, is entropy, 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 order to chaos, order to chaos. We never observe or are able to repeat chaos to order. We can never repeat that without input of intelligent beings. So that is your proof that evolution is incorrect. If you have proof of information increasing, send it along. I'd love to have a look at it and check it out and research it and prove it incorrect, and I'd love to do that. So please send your examples to me, and I'll have a look at it, and I will do my best to look at the detail, the proof behind it, and we'll just have a look and see, is it actually information increasing, or is it information decreasing? And evolution assumes that information always increases, and creation assumes that information decreases by way of mutation over. I think scientists, I heard in a seminar the other day that scientists figure there's 100 or 1,000, 100 mutations every single generation, and those generations are pretty much all bad. Now you may get a mutation that acts like an enzyme in the bacteria and appears to be advantageous, but you're still losing information. You're still the body, the bacteria, whatever it is still losing information. They've lost information, and it may help for a little bit, but the overall downward trend still occurs. Entropy is still in place. So that is it, the proof for evolution, and please let me know if you have any proof of evolution, and I'd love to look at it.